Good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World. Today, 10 ASEAN leaders have a meeting. They met on teleconference virtually to discuss COVID-19 situation. And in addition to only 10 ASEAN members, they also discussed with ASEAN plus 3 members, China, South Korea and Japan, on how to cope and learn with one another on COVID-19. And in the Thai PBS World tonight, the program which we broadcast online at 7 p.m., Kun Thep Chaiyong and me have talked to Deputy Spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs on ASEAN Plus 3 Special Summit. To see teleconference among 10 ASEAN leaders is not easy to see this scene. It must be quite chaotic to arrange this. Can you tell us what's behind the scene?
Well, in terms of the arrangement, well, it's the first time. It's kind of innovative in terms of innovative multilateral meeting technology. So it's the first time that the 10 ASEAN leaders had this kind of meeting on video conference, as well as with the plus 3 countries. But of course, as a sign of the times, it's necessary for this situation now. Yeah.
So, Gunnatapan, what do you think of criticisms that ASEAN moved too slowly in response to the crisis? Why did they have to wait until the ASEAN summit before they sit down and talk about concerted and coordinated efforts to deal with this problem? But of course, I understand that there were earlier meetings at the lower levels and of course up to the ministerial level to discuss this. But the perception is that ASEAN has been slow in responding to the crisis. Is that fair? I mean, this kind of criticism.
Well, at the outset, people who are not familiar with multilateral affairs might think that it's slow, but in actuality, as Kun Thep Chai, as you mentioned, there are mechanisms within the ASEAN framework. So this is not actually the first time that ASEAN countries are meeting at the summit level, because they've been meeting at other levels, the direct ambassador or director general level, at the SOM or the senior officials level, at the ministerial level as well. So it's like a trickle up effect actually to present each proposal up the scale a bit. But in the meanwhile, projects have been going on as well. So I don't think that it's quite fair to say that it's slow in acting. I think it's timely to be at the summit level. That's what I would say. If you asked about the summit itself on the ASEAN side before the plus 3 side, right?
That's right. So what was the most concrete outcome of today's ASEAN summit?
First of all, the chair of Vietnam, their theme is cohesiveness and responsiveness. So they're taking a whole of ASEAN community approach. For the concrete ones, I think Kun Nak just now mentioned a bit earlier. First, of course, is the ASEAN Response Fund, in which it's a Thai proposal, and the ASEAN member states and the ASEAN plus 3 also agreed to it and then endorsed it, just that the details have to be worked out. That's very concrete. It would be funding all the medical supplies, all the necessary equipment needed in each country. The second concrete result, well, one from Thailand is that, of course, we're offering to fellow ASEAN member countries locally produced test kits as well for COVID. Also, there's this scheme that ASEAN countries simply would help each other in third countries. So meaning that ASEAN nationals in a third country would be assisted by an ASEAN government if they don't have representation there. So for example, if an Indonesian national needed assistance in South America and then there was no Indonesian embassy, Thailand would offer assistance to that ASEAN national in terms of getting through the COVID situation. So that's what's the other that's the other concrete discussion.
And where will the fund come from?
Yes, first of all, they discussed about using the existing mechanisms within ASEAN plus 3 as well, there is the possibility. There was a flow chart actually, which was presented, wherein the source of funding would be sort of like grouped up and combined to reach the amount, that's the target. But that's of course not released yet. That's still under discussion with the +3 countries. There was also discussion about, aside from the COVID fund itself, the money that would be helping ASEAN economies in the long run as well. So including like loans from the Chiang Mai initiative, multilateral initiative, and the like. There's also actually a package that like development banks can also offer or chip in to this fund, like the Asian Investment Bank.
What's the atmosphere in the meeting, Kun Nattapanu? Because normally we know that ASEAN, during the meeting, they tend to have clear guideline, clear procedure, but this one is special summit meeting. What's the difference?
Actually, the ASEAN protocol for summit was followed, just that it was through teleconference. So it was not an informal retreat type of meeting, but it was the regular type of summit. There was the presence, of course, of all the 10 ASEAN leaders, and when we had the +3, all the 3 leaders of +3, there was also the presence of course, as Secretariat, the ASEAN Secretariat as well. And I think the atmosphere was very conducive to discussing an important issue like this. It's an urgent issue, and it's about time that we had the leaders level meet on this. It would be impossible without video conferencing, of course. Yes, and you see, I think we have on screen now the images there. Each person had their turn in making intervention, each leader. And Vietnam, as chair, conducted the meeting very well. It was a good exchange, and the declaration came out in a timely manner for both the morning and the afternoon sessions.
Did China make any specific offer to help when ASEAN in dealing with the crisis?
Yes, well, China focused on the keeping with the economic sustainability, I would say, economic and trade sustainability, keeping with the upflow of transport, of supplies, of goods, without compromising the control of the outbreak. They also discussed about tariffs, about trade as well, which should not be affecting the outbreak, and food security. And China, when you ask this, China, of course, they have the Asian Investment Bank, AIIB, and they would be welcoming discussions for further perhaps the use of the AIIB recovery facility as well, which has funding. But of course, this still has to be discussed in due course. So as you mentioned about the funding, there are many sources of funding, existing mechanisms for new mechanisms as well, and that has to be discussed further. So that's one from China in terms of what you asked.
So what will be the next move after the discussion today, after the summit today, Kun Nattapanu? What will happen in terms of action?
Yes, well, as mentioned, after an ASEAN summit, all deliverables are taken into account in terms of how to implement it. So trickling it down, the ministerial, the SOM level will be working into detail the action plans on what exactly to do. This is when it's a summit level, it's more of political commitment. So after this, there will be certain meetings to further work out the implementation stage of everything discussed.